So let's go ahead and at least get started with the kind of kicking off the meeting, and then hopefully it looks like some people are running a bit late today, that we can just bring them in as they're available. So thank you everybody for being here today. This is the third of our intended onboarding meetings for the Regional Homelessness Authority Advisory Committee. And just again, I want to remind everybody, I know this meeting is in the middle of the day and at times when maybe otherwise you all might be eating. So please do feel free to take care of yourselves as you need to during the meeting, to get up to use the bathroom or take a little break, to eat during the meeting. This is intended to be a place where we don't have to deny all our needs in the process of getting the meeting done. So today we are going to give you, Michelle has prepared a whole bunch of information about this committee and how it relates to subcommittees and the overall Regional Homelessness Authority, and some good background context. Claudia and Marcus have joined us again to help with team building. And then this will kind of kick us into a meeting next month, in May. That will be sort of when you officially start your formal meeting process, and we'll be getting into some of the specifics of the continuum of care in particular. And hopefully you all will be ready to talk about maybe selecting from within your group a chair and co-chair for this meeting, so that you don't have in my case, a county staff person facilitating, but somebody who is one of your members with you. So I didn't hear any other volunteers for the land acknowledgement. And Christy, if you're willing to do it again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. This is an honor. I am very grateful to be here today among my colleagues, and I look forward to us all meeting one another. I'm going to invite everybody to just take a deep breath. Just close your eyes and take a deep breath. And then exhale. Keeping your eyes closed. Take another deep breath, just at your own pace. And then exhale. And then one more. Breathe in. And then exhale. And when you feel comfortable, open your eyes and come back to center. And what that does for me is to place us here and now, which is really important for the focus of what we're doing. So we drop away all of the other busyness that we all have in our lives, because we're all warriors in this together. We're all here on this board fighting the good fight for a cause we believe in, fighting for the people who can't fight for themselves. And we're peaceful warriors, but we all have voices. And so I just encourage those of you that are here today to remember that we're all here and we're all on the same team. That doesn't mean we're all not going to fight sometimes, because that's what families do. And we're creating a family here, believe it or not. We will get to know one another quite well. I'm hopeful of that. And in so doing, I want us to all remember that we're all from the same family. We're all from the family of ancestors that settled this land. These are the Duwamish people whose land we're holding this meeting on. And in the family of man, in the family of woman, in the family of Native Americans, there was no such thing as homelessness. We gave what we had. We honored the land. We honored the spirit. We left no footprint, and nobody went hungry, nobody went unclothed, and nobody went unhoused. And so we want to bring that spirit back. And so in those inhalations and in that quiet moment in between those inhalations, let us remember that that's what we're here for. And I think we can do good works, and I'm really excited to be here with you. And so I just hold that up. And if I was smudging, I would hold the smoke up to ancestor, to grandfathers, and know that the wisdom masters smile down on us today in the work that we do. And I'm grateful and blessed, and blessings on all of us to be here to do this work today. Aho. Thank you.
Thanks, Christy. That was lovely. Really, what a lovely way to start a meeting. I think with that, Claudia, do you want to take us through introductions?
Sure. For introductions today, it would be better if folks had their camera on, if you're able to. And what I'm going to invite folks to do is share their name and their pronoun and a feeling word accompanied by an action. And I'm going to challenge y'all today in saying that the feeling words of okay, fine, and good are off the table. It's okay to repeat feelings, and everyone's going to have a unique individual action. So the way that we're going to roll it out is, like, my name is Claudia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm feeling excited. So that's my action. And everybody else keeps your mics off, but where you're sitting, also say Claudia, she, her, excited, and everybody make the same movement that I did after I did. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, y'all say Claudia, excited. So remember, so everyone should be going like this.
Do it again so we get a little practice, please.
All right, cool. Yeah, Claudia, she, her, excited. Thank you. And last time that we did intros, the cadence was really great. Like, y'all just kept it going. So we're just going to practice that again today by keeping the cadence up. And for those folks that can't turn on their camera, write your name, pronouns, and feeling word in the chat. And if you can't have your camera on, just describe the action that you're doing so that we could get a visual. Go ahead and do that in the chat if you can't turn on your camera. But for those of you that have your camera on, whoever wants to get started.
I noticed we're not getting the closed captioning at the bottom. Is that something we do individually, Claudia or Sarah?
Yeah, okay. You can go ahead and on the close. Do you see a closed caption button?
I do.
And then if you click the little arrow to the right of it, it should say subtitle. So show subtitle, and hopefully you can see it then.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever wants to kick us off, please go for it.
Marcus, he, him, hopeful.
Christy, she, her, I'm feeling strong. Yeah.
I'm Tamara, pronouns are she, her, and I'm feeling gratitude.
I'm Sherry, she, her, feeling happy.
I'm Robin, she, her. I'm feeling lighthearted.
I'm Linda, she, her, and I'm feeling blessed with praying hands.
Hi, I'm Noreen Hill, she, her. I'm feeling inspired.
I'm Ben Mitch, he, him, and I'm feeling ambitious for what we can accomplish. And I'm doing like a fist in the air.
I'm Jeannie, she, her pronouns, and I actually feel really emotional today. So I'm just gonna
I'm Michelle, she, her, and I'm feeling connected.
I'm Jenna, she, her, and I'm feeling dejected.
My name's Shanae Colston, she, her pronouns. And I'm feeling stagnant. Just so you know the spelling of my name. Is that who spells your name when they put it up there?
Is it misspelled? I can rename it for you if you can't do it from your phone. Okay, I'll jump in. I'm Carrie Flory. I'm feeling icky. She, her pronouns, sorry.
I'm Kelly, she, her pronouns. I'm sending love.
All right, and it looks like in the chats we have Brianna, she, her, feeling bubbly. And whoever else wants to put in the chat your intro, that would be great. So we have Lee's, who's they, them pronouns, feeling physically disconnected and staying still.
And Claudia, I also see one from Brianna from earlier. My name is Brianna, she, her. I'm feeling bubbly, throwing 2 thumbs up. We did that.
Thank you. We read it. Yeah, I read it earlier. It's all right. Brianna can get 2.
Sorry.
Intro.
I must have been frantically noting down names of meeting participants.
All right. So if you're keeping track, Jeannie, whoever else wants to share, and also I want to put in the caveat that your movement could be really similar to what Liz posted, who's like, my action is staying still, and being is an action, right? Listening is also an action.
Is there anybody else, or are we moving on?
We're making space just to ensure that that everybody had the opportunity to participate.
I'd really like to say I'm sorry that the few people that didn't feel well had the courage to say that they didn't feel well, and I hope you feel better.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks for participating.
All right. And with that, we'll take us into our public comment period. Carrie, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. I've opened the chat for public comment. So if you'd like to make public comment, we typically have it for about 10 minutes. I know we're still setting the norms for this meeting, so right now we're just going to set what we have in the past. So if anyone would like to make public comment, you may either raise your hand or put your name in the chat window and state also where you're from. Christy, I see your hand. I'm going to wait just a second to see if any of the public attendees have something they want to share. We'll just give it a second. Make sure everyone has the space to sign up if they wish.
Carrie, are you the only person who knows who the public attendees are? Or is that something that we all have access to know, or what?
I think that you all should be able to see it. It is a setting on Zoom, so if you can't see it, let me know. The way you can see the public attendees is if you click at the participant button at the bottom, and you should see two tabs. One says panelists, one says attendees, and it says 7 attendees, one of whom is Linda Peoples, who's calling in. Can you all see that? Yeah, okay, great. So seeing none, looks like we don't have anyone signing up for public comment. So Jeannie, I'll kick it back to you. But Christy, did you want to say something?
I did. Thank you, Shanae, for asking that. That was the same question I had, was how did we know? So thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for addressing that, Carrie. I did invite 3 different entities / people here today. One was from the Samaritan Beacon community, who's very involved in the homelessness population. The next person was from UW. They are researching in homelessness. And the last person is a man named Daniel Beekman, who, as you might have noticed, was a reporter for the Seattle Times. He recently took paternity leave. He's a new dad, but he's back on the beat. We spoke this morning. He can't be here at this meeting, but I did get permission from him to speak about, he's writing about, and of course, you know, as a reporter, he has to stay neutral, but he's very excited about us as a group, wishes us well, and will be in attendance later. But he did want us to know about the Compassion Seattle Charter that's happening, and what we may think about that, or how we're going to be working that, or how that affects us as advisory board members or the new King County Regional Housing Authority. And if anybody wants any more information about that, we can provide information. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up. I had spoke with Jeannie about this, and also on the agenda for the legislator, this is item number 2, there is a potential House measure to ban the existing moratorium on rental evictions. And that's going to affect us as a board, because if that goes through, we're going to see a whole bunch of people who are going to become homeless. And these are going to be people who have never faced homelessness before. So
can we say like people experiencing homelessness, not people who are homeless? Can we just fix the language that we're using when we're talking about people who are experiencing a bout of homelessness versus they are homeless?
Right. I see what you're saying, that we've got 2 different issues. I'm just looking at the flood waters are going to be flooding us if we allow that to happen. So I'm looking towards the future, but I do appreciate what you're saying, Shanae. So those are the 2 issues I wanted to bring up, and I believe eventually they're going to affect us down the road. But yeah, we need to, the first issue I spoke about does affect the people right now who are homeless. The second issue is going to bring a whole second wave.
Well, I just have to say this again. I'm having an ouch moment or something in regards to our language. And I'm coming from a point of like, people are not homeless. People are experiencing experiencing homelessness, right?
Okay, I
And so
see
it's
what you're
just the
saying.
language that we're using when we're talking about people who are in these types of situations
I see.
and those challenges that they're facing. Like, as a person who's been recently experiencing with homelessness, I wasn't a homeless person. I wasn't like all that. I was a person who's experiencing homelessness due to whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Shanae. Thanks for bringing
Yeah.
that to my attention because language does matter. I had been using, and I need to incorporate this more, our houseless neighbors. Does that sound like something that we might use, or is that a little too
No,
much?
because if somebody identifies as a tent or something as their house and you perceive that as houseless, that's your issue, not theirs. That's their home.
Okay, so tell me again how you like the.
People just experience homelessness, right? They're not a homeless person. They're not homeless. They're just experiencing a situation that has left them without a home at this time, right?
Thank you. Thank
Or
you.
something that doesn't result into what they would consider a home, because again, we're our own expert. And so what a home to you is may not be a home to me.
Right.
And so
Thank you
really
so much.
reflecting into those person's unique individual experiences with being homeless and not like, oh, that makes that person, right?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Experiencing homelessness, that's kinder. And I appreciate you teaching me that. Thanks, Shanae. So that's pretty much all I had. And I appreciate you teaching me the language as we go. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shanae and Christy. And at this point in time, we'll go ahead and end public comment, but I will leave the chat open for 10 more minutes should anyone wish to make a written public comment. Thank you. Jeannie, back to you.
So first, I just want to welcome and acknowledge that Jessie has joined us. And
Sorry
then,
I'm late, you guys. I thought we started at noon and did a quadruple booking because I'm on vacation next week, which is much needed. But I'm glad to be here now. Sorry for being late.
and then actually, the exchange that just happened, I think, perfectly leads us into the next agenda item, which is to talk about the group agreements. And I will just say, I think what just happened is such a great way for the group to interact. Like, I heard Shanae speak her truth, and I heard Christy receive it and respond to it. And I just want to note that. And with that, Claudia, do you want to?
Yes, I'm gonna pop up a PowerPoint here. Carrie, do you think I could get permission?
Yes, so sorry about that. Give me just a second.
No problem.
All right, you should be able to now. Let me know.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Thanks.
All right, folks. So just a heads up that today is Marcus and I, it's our last day in the space, for now at least. And so we will miss you all. And we are tasked with getting through a bunch of things today. I know that this group has been really awesome at fulfilling the tasks that have been put in front of you. So this is just one more challenge that we have here. We have about 15 minutes. I'm going to bring back the agreements that we talked about on our first day. And now that we've had a little bit of more time to be together and to try them out and to see, how we can use the agreements in the future and hopefully to think about it, I want to get back to the drawing board and finish ironing out the group agreements. We had a really rich discussion the first time, and we had some really great ideas and conversations about what we needed in the group. And I think we've gotten to a really good place with our agreements, and now we just need to consolidate our list to make it a little bit more concise and workable for everyone, because I think the last time we were cut short on the time that we had.
Claudia, I see that Christina has a hand up.
Okay. Yes, please.
We need to remember there are captioners, so we need to speak in a respectful speed, as well as remember that captioning does have a little bit of a lag. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Christina? When you say remember that captioning has a lag, I'm hearing that, and I just want to make sure I'm hearing it right, that we need to pause before we move between topics so that there's a chance to have read all the captions. Did I get that right? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it and responding appropriately.
Yes, but that people are just mindful, because sometimes people just get excited and talk really fast because they just want to share, and we have to be respectful of Sarah as she types. So
thanks for calling that out.
Thank you. So if y'all look at the agreement slide here, this is the 12 group agreements that we came up with the last time that we met. And after we got off our call, I looked at the slide and I highlighted and changed the font on some things that I think we could work on. The first change that I made here is that I looked at the notes from what people said, and I noticed that we didn't have an agreement regarding listening, although there were several people that acknowledged that it was important. And so I put in the second group agreement to ensure that the agreements captured the conversation that we had. The next thing is that 3 and 4, as you can see, are they're in a different font, and this one says assume good intent and agree to disagree. And I highlighted those because I felt like we needed a little bit more conversation into getting at the core of what we actually meant so that we can land on an agreement that we could all understand and that we could all agree on. And the next thing is that 5, 6, 7, and 8, to me, seem like they could be consolidated into one. At least it seems to me that like the core need of the group could be transmitted by one agreement. So I'm wondering if we can work together today to consolidate, 5 through 8. So if some of y'all can think about that, that would be helpful. And if we could have a little bit deeper conversation about assuming good intent and agree to disagree. So I think we can start with that. And we can take it from there. So I'm wondering if we can get into, I'm not sure, I don't remember who all put into the space the assuming good intent. And I think that the conversation there was that on the one hand, you have folks that have good intention, and if we only focus on the good intention, we could inadvertently miss out on the impact that we're having on people. So assuming that people have good intent may not feel like enough in a space where we're working towards social justice and equity. It tends to happen because of the inequitable power dynamics that are set up in our society, that usually it's folks that experience more privilege who tend to say, but I'm coming from good intentions. And it's people that typically experience the brunt of the inequities that are like, yes, and your good intentions cause me harm over and over and over again. So what do y'all think is actually an agreement that we can get to that can get at the heart of this? And I think it's also connected to the other sentiment of, well, in spaces like this, there's many of us, we have different ideas, and we should all agree to disagree. And then someone chimed in and said, wait, but we can't agree to disagree when it's about my humanity, right? Or about people's lives, or about fundamental things that should be basic. For example, violence in a space, right? And we're not necessarily only talking about physical violence, but we're also talking about equity and distribution of resources and how that also can be violent. So what do y'all think is an agreement that gets us to the core of what it is that we need to agree on around 3 and 4?
Well, I guess I'm asking first off, if these are our words, why are you trying to change them? If this is what us as a group decided like we wanted, then there shouldn't be a need to like, I just don't understand why we're manipulating something that this is the language, this is the words and what we wanted to convey. And so I'm kind of lost on that. And then 2, in regards to your direct question of, can you put that slide back up just so I could see it really quick? Assuming good intent, when I see that or I think of that, a couple of things happen for me. One, my intentions and my impact are influential in the way I speak or present. And so that word intent, like my intentions are there, but like the impact that my intentions may have on somebody land differently and have at times a ripple effect. And then just in general, I, for myself, speak, I call it unconditional positive regard. In regards to like, not just, I don't want to assume anything, but I can know that there's just positive regard that I guess in hopes that you're not here to be like an op or spy or cause chaos, and that your actual intentions is to like be an ally and to align in thought partnering with equity and social justice in regards to what we're doing. So thanks.
I'd like to applaud that. And just to go back, I was the one who actually said that, and I can see the complexity of what you just brought up, Claudia, and I definitely love what, was it Shanae? Is that your name, Shanae?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So there's definitely like a fine line balance there to achieve. And I love the phrase unconditional positive regard, because I think that's what I was, what my intention was to use that word. And the recognizing the impact though, and it's funny that we're having this conversation because I'm currently experiencing something where intent versus impact is very relevant. And so this conversation is very, very timely, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate the perspectives on that have been shared here so far.
So thank you so much for engaging in that discussion. And to answer your question earlier, Shanae, the idea isn't so much it's to change the language of the agreements, it's to get to the core of what it is that folks are trying to convey, and so that everybody can have an understanding. And so like the example right now that was just exchanged is we can use the same language. The agreement could be unconditional positive regard. That's okay, and we can use that language if folks agree.
Oh no, that's good. Thank you. I was thinking like we were trying to like shorten the list, or like it was like, too long, or whatever. That's why I was asking like what in regards to what we're changing. But thank you for the clarification.
Oh yeah. And yeah, the idea also is to consolidate and shorten the list. And I think that sometimes when there are too many agreements, they start to contradict each other, right? So similar to like, wait, how can you be equitable, but at the same time agreeing to disagree? Or how can you be equitable by only focusing on intent, right? So I'm trying to get us to a place where we can, you know, consolidate some a little bit more to make it clear so that they're functional. And so something else that happens in spaces when there's too many agreements is that not only are they not used, but then the space feels like there's too many rules, you know, and people can't show up authentically or be open because they have to be thinking about all these ways that they have to perform. And then it turns into a performative space.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Christy and then Kelly.
Thank you. I appreciate what you just said, and I appreciate having doable goals too. They said that when you're setting goals, that they should be doable, short, to the point. Otherwise, you can get too many, and then you lose focus. What I would like to see, for brevity's sake, is that we, excuse me, is that we take singleness of purpose. That we look at our group focus as singleness of purpose, and that regardless of our outside issues, that we look at what we're here for as a board, as an advisory board, our singleness of purpose. And that lets a lot of intent or poor intent or bad feelings or bad vibes or miscommunications go by the wayside, that we always have that focal point of what are we really here for to come back to. And I've used that countless times in my professional and personal life, that if we can come up with a mission statement, if you will, or we just recall our singleness of purpose as an advisory board is to eradicate homelessness. That's not what it is, but I'm just using those words. Then we can come back to that and remember exactly why we're here, what we're here for. And so, personalities are going to flare. We're each one of us has personality, and that's going to happen in a diverse group like this. So I find that really helpful, and especially with the regard that Shanae was talking about.
So if the agreement is to assume positive, unconditional positive regard, the first word is an action word. So that immediately tells everybody this is the action that y'all agree to engage in when you come into the space. This is how you will be. Christy, what would be the action word for the singleness of purpose?
To focus on our singleness of purpose.
Focus on singleness of purpose.
And to recall that when we get off topic, because we're going to have sidebar conversations, and we're going to digress. We're going to see a million other topics that we're going to want to address, and we're going to want to eradicate homelessness, and we can't and we won't. We're going to be able to bring it back home if we all have that same purpose in writing in our hearts and in our heads. What does everybody else think?
Kelly, go ahead.
Focus, yeah. Thank you. The word assume, though, you know what they say about the word assume, that you make an ass out of you and me? Has everybody heard that?
Yeah, I don't like the word assume, because I don't want to
either.
assume anything. I like to ask questions. I don't know what another word is for assume, but I just don't like assuming.
Okay. How about the intent for unconditional positive regard? Because my intent, again, that's kind of a vacillating verb, but when I assume, I always think of that. ASS, you and me, so I don't know.
Can we come up with an adjective, first hear from Kelly and then circle back to while y'all think about an action word?
Approach. Jesse just came up with approach. I like that.
All right. So I'll just share just a correction on number 2. Listen with and, I think, instead of and.
Oh, and, yeah.
And then in terms of my questions were, my question originally was sort of like, Shanae, why are we reducing things? Because part of the reason why I'm a part of this group is is how I function in other groups and in my leadership style. And some of the things that we are doing now, we have to have a spirit of both andness rather than either orness. And I'm not necessarily bothered by having 12 or even more, because if we're truly trying to grasp at threads of difference here and build something new, I think we need to have approaches. Some of the things that are considered best practices are coming out of white supremacist culture. So I just want to say, let us not edit to the point and wordsmith, because we're not going to ever have a singular common language that we're all going to agree to. Many of us are nodding and saying yes to things that we could wordsmith it to death and it still wouldn't say what we need. So I'm hoping that we can have some kind of both andness in this conversation to say, yeah, the language is close, but it's not quite it. So we're here to sort of hold the line and be the plumb line in the moment to say, yeah, that's close, but that's not exactly where we're going or what I'm meaning in this moment. I'm hoping that we are creating a best practice in this moment, because I'm positive that this group looks probably unlike any of the folks who created best practices. So that's just our invitation here to really value all of the voices that are coming, and value our angst and our ouches and all of those things, because what we're doing here is for our benefit, yes, but also to create a new culture that is more inclusive than it's ever been before.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I think that there's definitely a balance of, wordsmithing and getting, really into the weeds of this. This is why, one of the reasons why, like, during the first meeting and this meeting, we don't have a whole lot of time to spend on this, because we could spend hours and hours on this, right? But the idea is holding that balance and having this group, get us to a place where, what is that balance that feels comfortable to this group, while also focusing on the singleness of purpose. And a lot of these things are about balance, right? And sometimes agreements get tricky when, like I was saying earlier, they, negate the other. So that's definitely something that we have to look out for. And every group is different. Every group is there's gonna be different sets of agreements that work, that work for them. And so I definitely hear y'all about, if y'all feel like 12 agreements and like these agreements are good, let's go with it. And also, I think my question to the group is there a way that we could, that there are some agreements that say the same thing? And if not, if y'all feel like, what, those agreements, they need to be the way they are, then we can leave them that way. And if there are some agreements that we can look at that say, what, this one can be rolled into this other one, well, like, let's do it. So, we're making the space for the conversation to happen. So I appreciate that we're having it.
I just sent a text message out in the chat to combine 3 and 4. I don't know what everybody thinks about that.
May I chime in?
Oh,
yeah, please go ahead. We'll hear from you, and then we'll wrap up this conversation. And like somebody was saying earlier, it's okay for this to be imperfect, and we can, it's not set in stone. This is something that y'all can revisit later and be like, what, we need to add an agreement, or we need to go back to the agreements. Y'all can always do that. I just wanted us today and our time today to leave y'all with a list that y'all felt, that we could move forward on with. Marvin, go ahead.
All right. Would like to keep this simple. So it was my expectation that within those 4 lines, that in our work together, we work from good intent. We are respectful, cultivate, and are looking to push. We speak truth to power, and we choose to advise in the best interest of those who may not have a voice at the table. I mean, that's how I look at our agreements. I mean, they're giving us the parameters that we as a group will bring to the table each and every time. I don't think it's so much about wordsmithing as it is about context, about how we wish to approach our work. And I like what I hear from folks, you know, who want to make sure that we aren't silencing ourselves or not giving ourselves an avenue in which to have truly meaningful conversations about how we will be trying to move forward. That's about it. It got a little wordy. Sorry.
No worries. All right, y'all. I'm gonna wrap up this section, but I invite anybody who has these like strong feelings about, you know, the way the agreements are to go ahead and, you know, submit them to Jeannie so that she can help y'all and bring in facilitators to get to a point where y'all can keep working on the agreements. But for now, this is what we've landed on. I think that it's a pretty solid list, so thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
It looks like Jeannie might be having some technology issues. Give me just a second. She has a camera that sometimes likes to misbehave. So I think we'll move into the next section of the agenda, which is Michelle Valdez, overview of Advisory Committee and Regional Homelessness Authority. Michelle, I've got your slides. If you'd like me to present them, just go ahead and tell me when to move to the next slide.
Great.
Give me just a second to get that up.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. Hi everyone. Really happy to see you all again and be here for this meeting. As Claudia said earlier, this is also my last session with you all, so looking forward to finishing this conversation. Carrie, go ahead and go to the next slide. So I just want to give you, I know you all saw the agenda, but just a quick overview of what we will be covering today. And actually, hopefully it's less of me talking and more of us just having a conversation. And honestly, what you were all just talking about just now in terms of your group agreements is pretty much the same conversation we're going to have throughout our time today, focusing a little bit more specifically on some of the mission and values and theory of change that's in the COC governance charter that sort of guides all of the work you're doing. But I think all of the things that you just talked about play exactly into how we just want to bring you all into the space to continue working together. But in terms of what we are going to talk about, we're going to sort of break it into two sections again today, and we'll take a break here shortly in between those. But the first piece, we are going to talk just a little bit more about the advisory committee, you all specifically, and the work group and the different authority that's designated to each of you. So want to talk a little bit about the advisory committee membership, the decision-making process and authority, and then review the scope and designation of the 6 work groups that are already in place throughout your charter, and then a little bit of time for just questions, discussion and clarification on that part. Then we'll take a break. And then the last piece for me today will be just talking about how y'all want to move forward together as a committee. So I want to spend a little bit of time reviewing the COC mission, values, and theory of change, like I said, that are in your charter. And then there's also a section around advisory committee member commitments in your charter that I wanted to pull out and then have a discussion with you all, just sort of how you see that showing up in your work, what you need from each other to show up in this space, and then as well as what you're going to need from the regional authority staff once they're in place and supporting you moving forward. And then we'll just close out all of these onboarding sessions with just a little bit of reflections, questions, and then talk for a minute about sort of what's going to happen next when you're all on your own. Everything that we are going to talk about today, again, is covered. It's directly in your COC charter that I have been referring to over the last several meetings. Again, this is something that was developed and approved by the previous COC board on their as they were on their way out. And I believe some of you may have been involved in some of the discussions through either other committees or work group participation. Just wanted to make sure that you are all aware of what is in that charter and that you're all on the same page going forward into working together. You can go to the next slide, please, Carrie. So we have spent time talking at the previous sessions about your role as the COC board specifically. But today I wanted to talk more generally about your role as the advisory committee within the regional authority structure. So again, specifically the membership makeup and requirements, as well as the authority of your committee and the work and delegated responsibilities for each work group. So I know that you are all probably very well aware of all of the points that we're going to talk about because you just went through it in order to get selected to be a part of this advisory committee, but just wanted to call them out briefly and make sure that everyone's clear. So in this section, in regard to the makeup of the advisory committee, I just want to call out the requirements that were spelled out in your charter. So for this committee, there is a maximum of 19 members, which is you all. You will need to select a chair and a vice chair. Obviously, you haven't done that yet, but my guess is that would probably be one of the first orders of business that you'll do here coming up soon once you have the regional authority staff on board. There are certain representations or categories that have been identified in your charter to ensure that membership comprises an appropriate mixture and array of private and public sector community leaders that are representative and reflect the diversity of people experiencing homelessness in your region. Members also shall be or folks whose combination of either identity, personal experience, or professional expertise enables them to represent the different perspectives of and being held accountable to the marginalized demographic populations that are disproportionately represented among folks who are experiencing homelessness in your community. So again, you all applied and were selected because of the different perspective, experience that you're bringing to this group. There also is individual members that have to be selected that represent specific geographic areas across your region. So specifically, you have to have representation from South King County, East King County, North King County, and the city of Seattle on this advisory committee. So you can go to the next slide. So all advisory committee members shall possess expertise, experience, or skill in one or more of these following categories. So again, as in recruiting for this committee, we're looking for folks who have experience implementing policies or practices that promote racial equity, or experience or background providing services for people experiencing homelessness or other related social services with an emphasis on serving populations that are disproportionately represented among people experiencing homelessness in your region, and or who have experience or expertise with physical or behavioral health care or any other intersecting system of care or institution that intersects with homelessness. And then lastly, it states that at a minimum, advisory committee membership must include individuals who are currently or formerly experiencing homelessness, homeless housing or service providers, coalition members, or community advocates. You must also include subpopulation representation. So folks who either represent or work with youth, families, chronically homeless, single adults, domestic violence survivors, veterans, or immigrant and refugee communities. So all of that has to be represented on this committee as well. The other categories of representation are faith-based organizations or community partners, including public or private funders of homeless housing services, with at least one specifically, one position that is reserved for a representative of local public funder that funds the continuum of care. And then you also have to have representation, Black, African American community, and American Indian or Alaska Native community. So I'm just calling all those things out. As you know, I mean, this is you all, the makeup of this current committee, but going forward, anytime you have a vacancy on this committee, you will need to make sure that you are filling the seats that meet those requirements going forward. So as far as your term on the committee, it is stated in your charter that there is a 1-year initial commitment is required at a minimum, but it's a 3-year initial term. As far as terms for the chair and vice chair, those are for 3 years from the date of nomination with the option of serving 1 additional year. And then the advisory committee membership must be reviewed every 5 years to ensure the required makeup is still reflective of your community. So all of those things that we just went through in terms of different representation and diversity that needs to be on the committee, you will review that on a regular basis, but at least every 5 years to make sure that that representation still is reflective of your community. Just a few other things, and then we'll pause to have a conversation and questions, but you can go to the next slide, Carrie. So in terms of sort of the format and structure of these meetings and your decision-making authority, as you all already know, your meetings must be open to the public and allow for some type of public comment. Your meetings should operate under the premise of consensus-based decision-making, and also strive to operate with sufficient time for discussion so that each person has a fair chance to be heard and issues can be understood. So I think that is super reflective in the conversation that we just had earlier about your group agreements. I recall at a previous meeting we had where some of you were talking about like making sure that you're not rushing through some of these conversations, right? So that there's a lot of time in each committee meeting to have actual thorough discussion so that you're not just in the position of kind of rubber stamping decisions that come before you, that you really have the opportunity and the space in this group to ask questions, to clarify when you don't understand something, or if you just want more information. Some of the other requirements are that only seated committee members can actually vote on COC business and decisions, or COC business, and that decisions can only be made when there is a quorum present. So what's in your charter is a quorum is 50% plus 1 members. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about work groups here in a second, but going forward, what will happen is that work groups can make recommendations to your committee on specific policies and program decisions, but ultimately you are empowered and authorized to make final decisions based on your own expertise. We'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in practice here in a minute. And then the last 2 points on here are just that, and you will forward any recommendations requiring action by either the implementation board or the governing committee. So things that are outside of your purview or authority that come before you, you would move those forward to either one of those 2 bodies to make a decision when needed. And then lastly, you may also adopt revisions to the charter in compliance with HUD COC program regulations. So like I said, everything that we're outlining is based on what is in your current charter that you have to operate under, but you have the authority to adopt revisions to that. You have to do it at a minimum every 5 years. You have to revise and renew your charter, but at any time, if there are things that you think need to be changed in there, you have the authority to make some of those revisions. Go to the next slide. It's a couple of other quick things for this section. So again, talking more specifically about work groups, I just wanted to touch on the scope a little bit and the delegated responsibilities of the current work groups. Okay, I see somebody has a hand up. Actually, I'll stop. I think, Christy, do you have a question before I get into the work group piece?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Michelle. My question is about when will we actually get to meet the implementation boards and the governing boards, and will we have agenda data as to when their meetings are, and will we be invited? Is that personal, or how are we going to learn about that?
Actually, Jeannie, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. We don't have anything planned right now for any sort of opportunities for you all to meet. One thought I had about this was to invite the implementation board co-chairs to the meeting in May or to a future meeting to kind of start that relationship building. And then
who are the implementation people? Who are the people you're referring to?
Yeah, so in the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has kind of a 3-part governing structure, of which you all are one part of it. And then there's an implementation board that has responsibility more for the operations of the Regional Homelessness Authority, and a governing committee that is responsible kind of for higher level decision making, like the annual budget, and a couple key things, like key decisions, approving an initial staffing plan, and they had confirmed the new CEO. And all the information about when they meet is on the website. I'm also happy I'll send that out to all of you after this so you know when they next meet. And it's good timing for this question because the implementation board will meet next week on Wednesday and the governing committee will meet next week on Thursday. So I'll make sure you are welcome also to attend those meetings at any time. Just, they're open public meetings as well.
I thought
a link.
Some of us here were members of those committee member board things too. Is that not accurate?
Yeah, we don't have overlap between them, but Jonathan Hemphill sometimes attends this meeting, and he, for example, is a member of the governing committee. Shanae?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Christy, did that answer your question enough?
Mostly enough. Yeah, thank you, Jeannie.
Thanks, Jeannie and Christy. I am leaving time a little bit now, but more so at the end of the start of the second part of the session to really start to identify what some of your needs are, some of your questions like that, so then we can make sure they either get shared with the regional authority staff as they're coming on or the implementation board. But I think that's the exact types of questions I thought you might have. Okay, so in terms of the scope of the work groups, I know I've mentioned this in previous sessions, but the work groups are structured to ensure more of a system level or specific topic focus rather than COC-wide focus. So to get in a little more detail, generally the work groups have the following characteristics and/or requirements upon them. So the chair of each work group will be the director of the corresponding functional area of the regional authority once hired. That sounds a little confusing, but we'll talk about that, what I think that means a little bit more in the next slide. The chairs and members of each work group will participate in ongoing training around integrating racial equity into their work, and work groups should be held accountable to developing analysis and policies that drive progress toward achieving equitable outcomes for people experiencing homelessness. That should be part of their charge in their ongoing work. Members for these work groups are selected from either the staff at the regional authority and from providers and folks with lived experience in the communities based on whatever their expertise is in the subject for that work group. So in other words, the work groups will be made up of a combination of folks from the regional authority, provider community, folks with lived experience, or any other partner agency that has direct expertise in that subject matter. The work groups are limited to no more than 8 regular members and are responsible for ongoing communication and coordination with you all, with the advisory committee. So the way I see it working most often, and I assume will happen here, is in your regular ongoing meetings, there would be standing agenda items where these committee chairs will come to this meeting and either share, present, keep you informed of what they're working on, get your input, and you would be advising. So it should be a two-way communication that's happening between the work groups and you all. And then lastly, a couple things. Work group members must participate consistently, or they can be removed or replaced by the committee chairs. And the work groups are empowered to identify and engage specific experts for time-limited projects to increase capacity. So again, I think that would mean that if a certain work group is working on a very specific topic, they can bring in sort of other folks or outside perspective to help inform some of the conversations. On the next slide, this is the last content information. So I know you've seen the different work groups that are currently designated in the charter, but I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to walk through each one and what their specific responsibilities are laid out currently in the charter. So there's 6 designated work groups right now. The first one is the Consumer Advisory Committee. So that committee is supposed to be co-chaired by the director of the Office of the Ombuds and a representative from the Lived Experience Coalition or other relevant customer representative, with members specifically that are selected by people with lived experience of homelessness, either through the Lived Experience Coalition or another relevant customer-led body. The Youth Action Board, or the YAB, is a collective of young people who have current or past experience of homelessness. The YAB members, they guide the implementation of the Coordinated Community Plan to prevent and end youth homelessness on behalf of the Continuum of Care. That is, they are designated to make those decisions for that group. The third work group is the System Performance Work Group, which is chaired or will be chaired by the director of the appropriate office from the regional authority once in place. The members of that work group should include regional authority staff, providers, and customers or consumers with expertise in that specific area, and must also include HMIS or your Homeless Management Information System lead representatives, and then a staff person from coordinated entry should all be a part of that system performance work group. And the one thing that I do want to call out is this group is very specifically delegated the responsibility of developing recommendations on system level performance metrics throughout this group. So this is the group who would be bringing to you all, for example, like here is how we think we want to rate and review community funded projects who are serving people experiencing homelessness, whether or not they're meeting certain system performance. The fourth work group is the Coordinated Entry Policy Advisory Work Group. And this is chaired by the director, again, of the appropriate office within the regional authority, so coordinated entry staff person, and includes members from the regional authority, coordinated entry staff, as well as providers and customers with expertise in this area. And then again, this policy advisory work group is delegated authority to make recommended system level practices and procedures that they would then forward to you. So this group again is meeting on a regular basis and would be the ones who would bring to you if there was a suggested change in the coordinated entry process or system, if they wanted to reprioritize how folks access the coordinated entry system. This is the group that would develop those recommendations to bring to you to approve. The fifth work group is the COC application or ranking work group. And this one is to be chaired by the executive officer or their designee of the regional authority to ensure that system level priorities are articulated in that work. Members of this work group will include non-HUD funded providers and consumers or customers who can make strong recommendations to the advisory committee for ranking projects during the annual Continuum of Care competitive application. So again, this is the group who will sort of oversee and develop the entire process to release the application for Continuum of Care funding, and then who will do all of the rating, ranking, and reviewing of those applications and making the determination on funding for different programs. The last work group is the cross-cutting policy work group. The purpose of this one is to provide a forum for providers serving a variety of populations to develop recommendations or share practices regarding interventions, challenges they may be having, policy issues or recommendations. This should be chaired by the director of the appropriate office of the regional authority again. And this work group includes representatives from all kinds of different groups serving the various populations. So I would imagine this group is probably a little more fluid in the conversations and topics and the members, but it should be made up of providers that represent different communities and populations throughout your region. Okay, so I'm gonna pause there before we take a break for a few minutes just to see if there are any questions about this information specifically, if you need any clarifications. I know some of you have participated on these work groups or committees in the past, so you probably know more than I know. If there's anything that anybody wants to ask at this point or any other comments. Looks like Christy, do you have a hand up?
Christy always has her hand up, doesn't she? I would like to ask you, do we have templates for these directives, or are we starting from ground zero and are we reinventing the wheel on all these? Please say no to that.
I'm not sure if I understand can you ask that again?
Do we have templates for all these directives that you're issuing with regards to these committees and their responsibilities? Are these already in place somewhere, or are we going from ground zero to create these committees and what we're responsible for?
Mm-hmm. So I'll give an answer, and then Jeannie or anyone else who knows more than me can chime in on that. But so everything that I just went over in terms of like the expectations, who chairs, like who should be on these, all of those things are in the COC governance charter. All of that came directly from that. That was all put in place and approved by the previous COC board. In terms of like, I think some of those, I believe at least a few of those committees have been continuing to operate right now. I think there may be some that are on pause right now. But again, and we can talk a little bit more about this in the next section too, but and I know this sounds like redundant, I keep saying this, but when the regional authority actually have staff in place, especially like that sort of director and leadership level, it's their job to make sure all of these things are happening, that these committees are stood up, that they have the support they need, that there's structure put in place to it. I would think about it for you all that your role is to ask questions, help advise. My guess is that some of you will be asked to participate on these different committees at different points, but you all shouldn't be inventing anything, coming into it from scratch.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I see that Christina wrote that the system performance group has already been meeting. So this is news to me. I did not realize that some of these committees were already up and running and had been running.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think, I am, during our next part, when we're having conversation, I'm going to be tracking some of your questions and comments and thoughts. But to me, I think one of the things I would say to Mark when they get on board and start hiring staff is I think one of the next meetings that they should be coming to your committee and updating you. Like whoever's been continuing to meet or lead these work groups should be coming to you all and, sort of giving you an update around this is the work we're doing, this is who's on the committee, so you aren't feeling sort of blind about it.
Okay, Michelle, Christina just wrote another comment saying we meet again next week. Would it behoove us to meet with you? Are we invited to this, or is this a closed committee? Or I'm interested in learning, especially as it pertains to us. If this is something that would enhance my knowledge as an effective member of the board, would this be, Christina, maybe you want to address this. No, it's not closed. I'm not. What do you think?
Similarly, I think it's an open public meeting, just like this one. And Christina, if you have anything else to add there, I mean, you, I'm sure, know better than I do.
This is I don't know what I don't know till I don't know that I don't know it, and I didn't know this. So, oh, you're discussing the point in time count. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Christy, your questions are exactly the right questions. Like, you all need to know, like, just what's happening, where do you plug in or not, and if not, like, how are you informed? And again, my assumption would be that going forward at each of your meetings, that there would be an update from somebody on each of those work groups. So you know very well, like, what is happening, what are they focusing on, and how you can plug in.
Thank you. My next question would be, explain it to me like I'm a fourth grader. But I think I will be able to follow along if we're given the time and space to learn. So thank you so much, Michelle.
Yep.
A lot to learn. I enjoy that. Thank you. Hi, Christina.
Yeah, we're meeting. We're the group that kind of works on the point in time count, and we had the decision with the county this year to not go out and count people in tents, but only take the numbers from transitional housing. You know how, like, programs, instead of go from tent to tent and count this year because of COVID, and we're only required to do it every 2 years, and yet the county does do it every year. So that's that. And we also do the dashboard. So the dashboard that the county has on the website that says this many people are entering homelessness, this many people are leaving homelessness, around races as well as age, and defining it by single adults, families, those kind of definitions. So we work on the dashboard. That's what we do, and we've been doing that. I've been on it for 2 years now.
Okay, so these committees then are already in place and up and functioning, and then we'll just come aboard as new members to these committees as older members leave, or as their terms expire.
One of the other committees that was mentioned was the application and ranking committee. So that's based on the notice of funding availability, and they send that out yearly, I think, like around the fall time. So that one is kind of like a seasonal committee, so it's not up right now.
That's right.
That's okay, good. I'm kind of getting it. Thank you so much for filling me in on this.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. I think I'm guessing that several of these, like, they've been operating, they're going to keep operating, and yeah, you all will get updates. And as other members leave, yeah, you may have the opportunity to participate on those. Another just sort of example is, I might kind of said this earlier, but I'm assuming, I mean, I'm pretty sure the coordinated entry policy committee has probably continued, because that is something that you can't put on pause.
Yeah, they are continuing to meet as well, just confirming that.
Great. So things that should come to you all is that, like, say that your community or somebody, there's a conversation around changing your assessment tool that folks use to get into housing through coordinated entry, or you want to revise the prioritization process. That committee is tasked with doing the work, getting feedback from participants, other providers, putting together a recommendation that they would bring to you. You all would have a conversation, either approve. If you didn't want to approve, maybe you push it back to that committee saying, like, we want you to explore X, Y, and Z, or we want more input on something. But it's that kind of back and forth where they're doing the work with the staff, and then it comes to you for guidance, input, and approval.
And do we decide if we want, say, this looks like a real strong suit for me, I'm really interested in, this is where my heart and my head lies, I want to be on your committee? Or do we see that maybe the person that we've chosen to be a chair, they see us and go, this is your strong suit, I'd really like you to be on this committee? Are we appointed? Do we choose? We volunteer? Or how does that work, Michelle?
I mean, this is a question for the regional authority staff as they come on. I mean, so again, like what I just walked through, there are very specific, it's what I read in there. I'm not sure if this is how they're all operating, but what your charter says is there's no more than 8, right? So it's not like a free-for-all. I think there are open meetings that you can come to, but 8 members that are designated on that committee and to fill specific roles. So they may not want like 1 or 3 or 4 people who represent the youth homeless population.
Criteria, right? You need to meet criteria, right? So.
But I think that, again, once you start to work with the authority staff, those are great questions. Like, if I am interested in a committee, how do I go about doing that?
Right. Okay.
And there's been, I think, a cadence for when people, new, positions, people roll off and new people are brought in as well.
Yeah. Good. Also, the last thing I'll say, and then we will take a break because I'm sure folks need a quick one, is that, again, all of this was put in place in the last year or so, right? There is not only an entirely new board, you all, as well as entirely new staff and structure. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point you all aren't reevaluating, are these the right committees that we need going forward? Is this the right, all of those things I'm sure are going to be parts of your conversation. But the good news is the work hasn't paused, it's moving ahead, and you all just need to sort of get up to speed on that. So are we taking Jeannie and Carrie, like a 15-minute break, 10-minute, what are we at?
Yeah, we're a little off our time.
And
so
I
how
could
would
bring
what's
bring back an update until things are more official, if the group would like, with what the system performance group is doing.
I think that would be great, Christina, and I actually noted that down for the agenda for the May meeting. And just FYI to all of you, I haven't calendared that yet, but you will get the actual meeting invite. I'll send that out tomorrow. But I think that would be really good, Christina. So we're a little off our agenda. Would you all be okay if we decrease the break from 15 minutes down to 10 and have people come back at 1:05?
I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Okay, so we'll take a 10-minute break and be back at 1:05. I think it might be 11 minutes. All right, it's officially 1:05 on my phone now, Michelle.
All right. Well, welcome back from that quick break. We are in the final stretch of you having to listen to me. I do want to answer a quick question, a great question that Ben put in the chat earlier. So as I was going through some of those, it said in several places in terms of the work group membership, it said the chair of each work group would be the director of the corresponding functional area of the regional authority. And Ben's question is, does that mean the actual regional authority staff? Or sometimes when it says director, it does, like we often refer to board of directors, we may use that term. I believe in this circumstance, it does mean the regional authority staff. So I think there is a leadership body that are all director level folks that will oversee the different sort of functional areas of the work. And that is my understanding is that is who would be designated on those committees. Does that help? Great. All right. All right, so for just the next few minutes for this section, I just want to focus a little bit on how you will all work together moving forward as a committee and for what you need and what will happen next. You go to the next slide, Carrie. So as we keep mentioning in the charter, you have seen, I'm assuming at some point you saw that there is a mission, there's values, and a theory of change that were developed and approved last year by the outgoing board. I want us to spend a little bit of time just doing a quick review of those things and then looking at the specific advisory member commitments that are called out in the charter, and then just having a discussion about what that means to you and how you want them to show up in your work together as a group. So on the next slide, as I am sure you are all aware, the mission of the Continuum of Care is to make homelessness in the region rare, brief, and non-recurring. To accomplish this mission, the COC has adopted a set of values that will guide your actions and a theory of change that will orient the Continuum of Care in specific ways towards that mission. So the Continuum of Care through the board, which is you and its committees, will endeavor to make funding, program, and policy actions that are aligned with the following stated values. You can go to the next slide. So these values that are listed here are what's intended to guide the actions of not only this committee, but all of the bodies established in the COC charter, including all of the work groups that we just discussed. So I'm wondering if anyone wants to volunteer to read what some of these values are. I don't know if the writing's too small, if y'all can see it, but does anyone feel like they can read what's on at least those first top 3 boxes?
I can read.
Yay.
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. Recommendations and decisions will reflect the diversity of people experiencing homelessness. The COC will promote equity for communities of color disproportionately affected by homelessness. Decisions and recommendations made by the COC will reflect a cross-sector and regional approach.
Does anyone else want to read the other 3?
I'll read them.
Great.
COC will operate with transparency and inclusiveness. The COC will promote shared responsibility and accountability. COC leadership will establish clearly defined roles and responsibilities and communicate decisions clearly and widely.
Thank you. We're going to spend some time talking about all these, but I just also want to show you one other thing. So while these values are intended, as I said, to help guide the development of the specific recommendations and decisions that are presented to you, to the COC board, there is also a theory of change that was developed to provide a broader framework for how the COC orients towards the mission and towards sort of living out these values. So on the next slide, you can see the theory of change that was adopted. And again, I think some of you may have been involved in actually working through this back probably last year, if not earlier. So a theory of change is really what describes the, like, if we do this, then we believe this will happen. So the theory of change that was adopted for your region is, if we create a homelessness response system that centers customer voice, then we will be able to focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all. So this theory of change was developed by the community in concert with the National Innovation Service and members of the Lived Experience Coalition, and is consistent with the theory of change that was adopted by other key regional partners in your community. This theory of change, the intent, again, is it requires the COC to approach the system resources that it does control in a very specific way, with the understanding that if you do these things and work in this way, you will have certain results. So the other thing I just wanted to call out that is specifically in your charter, it says that the values of racial equity and centering voices of people with lived experience are integral to the work of your continuum of care. Therefore, any changes to the stated mission or theory of change on behalf of the continuum of care must be approved by the Consumer Advisory Council and the Youth Action Board prior to coming to this board, the advisory committee, for final approval. So those are things that are have been, I think, developed through a lot of work, all of the theory of change and those values. So we're going to come back to these to start our conversation, because I think it also, like, really, to me, aligns and resonates with some of the group agreements that y'all talked about earlier. And I'm just curious how you see sort of these playing out in the work that you all do together. But the last thing I wanted to bring your attention to on the last slide, these statements I pulled out of your charter. Again, they were sort of randomly throughout the charter, but what I saw is a few of the commitments that were asked of you specifically as the advisory committee. So I'm just going to read them to you. So it says, advisory committee members will commit to listening to, valuing, and utilizing the experience and contributions of people who are or have experienced homelessness as equal partners in ending homelessness. The second one is that advisory committee members, again, you all, will commit to regularly seeking input from, conveying the interests of, and providing updates to the communities that each committee member represents and are accountable to. So what I think that means is that you all were selected, right, to be a part of this advisory committee because you bring certain skills, background, experiences, you're representing either a certain demographic population or maybe a region of this community, right? So it's your responsibility as the member of this advisory committee to bring things back and forth between the group or community that you represent and this board, right? So I think somewhere else it said specifically, like, you would do that at least quarterly, that your responsibility is to, for example, like if you were here representing youth homeless providers, that you on a regular basis would be sort of that conduit to go into whatever other youth committee meetings there may be where you're talking about, like, this is the work we're doing in the COC, this is where I need, like, collectively your input. So then you go back to this board speaking on behalf of or with recommendations or input from the communities that you represent. And then the third one in here that I pulled out was that the advisory committee members will commit to providing leadership to further regional goals by being a community champion, by speaking on behalf of the regional efforts of the continuum of care, and assuring ongoing dialogue with the community on progress, results, opportunities, and barriers within the region. So to me, I think this is an important one, and what it means is that you are now you are the COC, right? You are part of the COC. So I'm just going to give you an example. In other communities that I've worked in, and also here locally when I used to work closely with the continuum of care, they're often, like, we would hear providers or other advocates or community members who would be very much like, the COC decided this, or they won't let us do this, or, you know, you all set this policy in place that we don't agree with. Well, now you are the they, or, right? You're the continuum of care. And so being a part of this committee to me means that you, like, really have ownership and become a community champion. So you are the voice of the continuum of care. You can go out in the community and talk about decisions that you're being made, talk about the challenges and the successes that are being made and progress that's happening in the continuum of care. Like, you are sort of that voice and representation. So all that to say, you can go to the next slide. I want to stop talking. We can share this screen for a minute, and then maybe we can just stop screen sharing so we can see each other. But I just want to open it up for the next probably at least 15 minutes, just conversation from you all. Like, how do these values and commitments, like, what do they mean to you? How do they align or not with what, like the group agreements we talked about earlier? How do you all want to show up in this space? How do you want or need others to show up in order to live out these values and commitments? And or, like, what do you need from the regional authority staff when they're on board? Just, you know, you probably, I'm assuming several of you were involved in creating these commitments or these values. So just want to know how this sort of is all sitting with you.
I guess from my own experience, there's some challenges and barriers that are happening, like in the Live Life Coalition meetings. There's, you know, things that are happening in CEAs policy advisory committee. And so those things, I'm just wondering if we're like partnershiping with them. In some ways, I can't help but have a bias in some of those because I just know who some of those people are and the work that they're doing and the gatekeeping that they're now doing in those positions, if that makes sense, now that they've been elected or put into those positions by people such as ourselves. And so I just want to recognize that for myself, there is some natural bias when I hear you speaking of some of these agencies and the people that sit on those boards where I've been in those meetings, because I know that, just to be honest, they're just bullshit. You know what I mean? They're just there to, some of those people are not, their motivation, their buy-in, their passion, the reason for being at these tables is not genuine or authentic. And so I don't want to get into like that personal aspect of what that is, but just know like some people are sitting on these boards that we have to communicate with. And I'm just expressing for myself that at times I'll have bias and prejudice because I know that there's ulterior motives for those people in particular.
Thanks for sharing that. I think, Jesse, did you want to see the screen with the values? Would that be helpful? Here, yeah, thank you. Yes, somebody, Christy, did you have a comment?
Christy always has a comment. You know, I have a different experience, much like everybody else does. I fill a demographic here, and I've got strengths and weaknesses. I consider myself a pretty sharp cookie in the area of resources and finding. I love resources. I love being able to put people in touch with information and whatnot. And this is such an opportunity to be able to delve into one of my passions, which is to find housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. And thank you so much, Shanae, for teaching me that. And I'll keep using that phrase so it becomes the norm for me. But I'm sitting here feeling kind of at sea that I need a mentor to actually help me to get this inside my soul, to be able to achieve these things, to reflect and to promote and to decide and to establish all of these things that we're trying to do, that I know populations that I want to reach. I know people that I would love to have work here, but I don't trust myself enough yet with what I know today to go out and do that. And I certainly hope that I'm not the only one that feels ill-prepared at this point in time to do that, and that there are going to be people that are going to take me under their wing, or at least say, here's how I did it. Maybe you can do this too. So talk to me like I'm a fourth grader, please.
Yeah, I think that this works specifically. Just there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to put together. So sometimes you'll learn like A, X, and V, and like you don't have the whole alphabet, and it takes time to learn all the context. And I think that all of the specific letters that you're learning right now are helpful, and I think that it will just take time for the context to come in. But yeah, I don't know, like not to invalidate what you are feeling in terms of like wanting a mentor. You can totally have a mentor, and yeah, totally feel free to speak more to that. But I guess I just wanted to validate that you're feeling, I guess, kind of how you should be feeling. Like it doesn't, like you're not behind because it doesn't all feel comprehensive yet. It's just perplexed, and that's fine.
Thank you, Liz. I'm glad I don't have to cure homelessness by next week, because I just wouldn't be able to do it. Thank you.
Christy, if it's I was just going to share something. I from another board that I am on. You know, it's true that like we all have this responsibility now to this mission, which I think we should all be taking very seriously. And like there's a lot that comes with that. I think also though there's something to be said that we can also rely on each other, and we don't, you know, every single one of us doesn't have to be an expert in every single thing. And that we're going to work together as a team, and each of us are going to bring, we're going to learn some of the things we don't know, but we don't have to know every single thing that we can rely on each other's expertise in different areas too.
Thank you, Ben. That helps a lot too, that I don't have, I'm a tenacious know-it-all, so I'm glad I don't have to know it all.
I see Jesse, I think, had your hand up, and then Sherry next.
Yeah, speaking of mentors, Christy, I had a mentor recently tell me that nothing happens with total transparency. So I'm feeling a little bit of a reaction to that word, especially having worked in government for a long time. So maybe a word that's more accurate there. And then the bottom right purple box, COC leadership will establish clearly defined roles and responsibilities and communicate decisions clearly and widely. I guess I am curious how the bi-directional aspect of that will work with Regional Homelessness Authority leadership, and how we will have understanding of decisions that get made. Like if we make a recommendation around something and fulfill an advisory board role, but that's not a decision that gets that is actually taken and made, maybe a different decision is made. What is the accountability? This is probably something we're going to continue to grapple with, right? What is the RHA leadership, both Mark and their leadership and other leaders that are part of this? What will that accountability back to us look like? And somebody talked about the tool earlier, and I had like an immediate like knee-jerk reaction, because when I hear about the VI SPDAT tool, I worked in the county when that decision got made, and as it was being implemented around the country, that tool. And now on the other side of it, has watched for several years the disparate impact that has, that it truly doesn't reach the people it's intended to reach. And so it's an example of a decision that got made even at the recommendation of other ideas. And so I guess just kind of calling upon that example to make sort of my raising up of how this value will be embodied by us and the RHA leadership. Obviously not something to be solved for today. It will happen in time, but it's just a thing that's near and dear, and I want to make sure that we attend to it.
I think that's such a great point. And yes, like we're not going to solve it here right now. And again, I feel like my answer is constantly a cop out, but this is the conversation you'll be having, right, with the staff when they get on board. But I mean, I think a couple of things, Jesse, I would say is that there are some decisions that are like the very specific things from last session that were, these are COC requirements, like the COC board gets to make, like there are going to be some things that you all get to make the final decision on, right? So even the staff at the authority may have an idea or an opinion or recommendation, but ultimately there's a few things that actually lie with you as the ultimate decision maker. And then there are going to be many, many other things that are happening region-wide that are outside of your direct purview. So yeah, it's the implementation board maybe, or the governing committee that gets to. So I think that's a very valid question, is like, what are you all, meaning the big U, right? All the boards, the committees, the regional authority, like what does transparency actually mean? And then that exactly what you said, like the communication up, down, and sideways around being really clear on when somebody's making a recommendation versus when they have the authority to make that decision. And then once the decision is made, if it's different than the recommendation, like what is looping back to you, and all of those types of things. I think that's super important. The other things I've heard some of you mention for sure, the gatekeeping that happens, historically how some decisions have been made around the tool, right? Or coordinated entry, some of those things. The one thing I will say, again, I said this the very first meeting, is I think the way this has been structured with you all coming in as the COC board and advisory committee is a very, very different makeup than it used to be. Look, on this decision-making body, very different than I see in a lot of other continuums of care across the country. And I'm really excited to see how that changes the gatekeeping and the decision-making. Like this group is a very different group than how it used to look. So I think you all there's no reason you should know it all right now, Christy. You all aren't responsible for solving it right now, but you are going to collectively continue to learn. But I think your job is what I've seen you all doing already, which is pushing, challenging, asking questions, raising your hand, speaking up, all of those things, which to me feels like this is the right group of people to really sort of shake up the way things have been done here for sure. All right, somebody, Sherry, I think was next.
Actually, the what I was gonna say has already been said. But I just was going to just kind of respond to Christy because I'm in the same situation myself, not really knowing nothing, but have lived experience, have the experience of working with families going experiencing homelessness as well. So it's I mean I just figured like just from our first meeting and getting to know everybody that we are working together, we're not judging each other, and we're here to make a difference. And I think um, with those guidelines and what we're doing, I think that we'll be okay. So because I know there's more people that have more experience than others, and some don't, but we're working together, so I think it's going to be awesome.
Right on. Thanks, Sherry.
What about other folks? How, just thinking about sort of in totality, all the things we've talked about over the last 3 sessions, and then more so around like these different, the mission, the values, theory of change. Anything that anyone wants to say in terms of like how they want to show up in these spaces or want and need to see each other showing up?
Oh, sorry.
My bad. Go ahead.
One thing that I really appreciate and love about this new governance structure is the amount of people with lived experience taking the leadership role and driving the effort to, eliminate homelessness as much as we can. And so I've always been a big advocate for that. And so I'm thrilled to see people with lived experience at the forefront driving the effort rather than funders or policymakers saying, I know what's best for you, so this is what I'm going to offer you. It's more equitable, less power and control driven. So I value that. Thank you.
Christy, I think I see your hand.
I do. I'd really like to hear from our silent majority. They got stuff percolating up there, and I would really like to hear from some of our silent members. God knows I pipe right up, even if I think it's a silly question or a silly comment. I'm not embarrassed to let you guys know, and I really appreciate everybody being so consolidating and affirming to me on my feeling less than, that I do bring strengths, but not having to know it all. That felt really good. It made me feel a whole lot, more charging in there and doing what I can. But what about the folks that we haven't heard from? I'd like to hear what y'all have to say.
I kind of second that, Christy. I would appreciate those who have kind of stepped back and stayed back to kind of step up. I too have a tendency to, talk a lot or ask a lot of questions and just get up and start doing it. I don't have a problem with any of that. But I also know that there's times where I need to step back, and I do want this to be a place where I can hear from people who maybe aren't the ones to like run out to the front and be those head leaders, but I still would enjoy hearing from you guys as well. I will say that eventually I'll get comfortable enough to call you out by name and expect to have a conversation with you too.
You know who you are.
Transparency.
You know who you are.
I think that I also want to like establish like an attitude, or I guess like establish like offer an alternate perspective on people's different participation styles. I know that I personally like to spend like the first while just like absorbing everything and then I have a tendency to kind of come in strong. But yeah, I think that sometimes people have the assumption that like, oh, people who step back must like just not want to share the things that they're thinking, when like sometimes we just don't feel like it'll be constructive, and that's fine. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, totally agree. I think also some people are processors and need more time to sort of absorb, and it's been a lot of information. So I do want to say appreciate everybody's just participation in the last 3 meetings in general. I know, again, have no intent that any of you walk away and like are retaining necessarily all the things I've sort of thrown at you, but at least hopefully you have it in writing after every meeting. I do want to say that after this session, again, you'll get the slides, but also the last couple of materials I'm putting together for you have, they're going to have like a bunch of things you may never want to look at, but links to different federal regulations, like HUD websites, like some of the questions I think Christy asked last time, just so there you have them in one spot. If you want to, sign up for different email lists through HUD to like keep up to date on different COC federal regulations, things like that. Like I'm going to try to provide you with as much information so you sort of have it at your fingertips if you need it. Definitely intent on taking, just collectively the conversation we've had, the questions that you've raised, questions I have, and pass those on to Mark and the regional authority staff so they know like what we've talked about, sort of what you've already brought into this conversation. And then I think just if anything else you're going forward with, like having some of this in your back pocket, right? It won't be the first time you've heard about it. You'll come in sort of prepared with some of these questions already for the first time you meet in your ongoing meetings. And it just won't be language that is brand new to you, hopefully. All right. Any last thoughts or reflections before I turn it over?
Looks like Marvin has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. I'm not good at looking at it.
It's quite all right. I just wanted to apologize to the group for being tardy today, but I look forward to working with others as we move forward. And I think we'll hear more voices as we start to focus in on things that folks will find in their wheelhouse and those who want to learn about more. So I think this is one step at a time. And I think these last 3 meetings have been really good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Marvin. Awesome. Well, with that, I think I'll turn it back to Claudia, who's going to sort of wrap us up. And I do just want to say, like, I really have appreciated being in this space with you all. Can't wait to see what comes next. Hopefully I'll continue to interact with you all in some way, shape, or form going forward. But I do mean it when I say, like, I think this committee and this board is made up in a very different way than I've ever seen. And I think will be a national model of how decisions should be made going forward, with truly centering the voices of people with lived experience and from different backgrounds and places that they sit in the community. So thank you all. And with that, I'm turning it to Claudia, I think.
Thanks, Michelle.
I got this, Claudia. I just want to say I'm so appreciative of the dialogue that I'm hearing, the way y'all bring each other into the space, the way y'all support each other in the space, the way y'all affirm each other in the space. This is a very dynamic group. And so I think you all will deliver on all the things said accordingly, and come up with something that really moves us in the right direction. So I'm so appreciative for you allowing myself to participate in this process with y'all of learning, growing, and understanding. And I look forward to the work that you are going to create. Now we're going to close this activity out. And so what I want to do is I want to put out some guidelines and some overview of an activity that we're going to do. It requires participation. And for those of you that are off camera, this may be a little challenging, but if you can use the chat feature, right? So what I want you all to do, and and then I'll explain the rationale afterwards. But I want y'all to do is I want you, without using any words, without talking, I want you all to organize by birth date. That means month and date, and organize in chronological order from January to December, and figure out how to do that collectively without using any words. I can model that for you as an example to get your juices flowing so you can see how this works. For example, I won't talk, but I'll hold this up. And can anybody guess what that means? Somebody? Anybody? Bueller?
January.
Right. Okay. So then if there's somebody that's February, then they hold up a 2 or 3, and then you organize based that. And then once I get this date, then I put up another date. So for example, I got a 1. Now I am, and then somebody that is March, right? So then you organize by date, or you're the 3rd. So you organize by date without using your words, and then you try to, and then so once I get, you're gonna have 3 minutes, and then once I do that, then you're gonna call out your date, your month, and your date to make sure that we got it right as the team in chronological order. And Jeannie, Michelle, Sarah, Claudia, you are excused from this activity. I would like the committee itself to be able to work on that. So with the ones that are in view, if you all can, I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and I'm going to say go, and then y'all, any questions before we go?
Question,
Okay.
Marcus, are you
Yes.
going to be moving us around in order? We just do we just do the handholds, and then you're going to move us in order?
You got to figure it out. And then once I say time, whoever has the first month that y'all's birthdays align with says their name, and then the date. So Marcus, January 22nd, and then the next person goes, and then the next person goes. And we want to see if we got in order just by not talking. And this is a different form of communicating.
Marcus, is it okay to use the chat?
You could use the chat if you want to.
Okay, Jesse, you win.
All right. Go. If I could give y'all a hint, start with your month, and then you could organize by month, and then y'all could do dates. If I'm giving y'all a hint in this game. So I see we got a 3, we got a 6, we got a 9, we got another 3, we got a 2. So 2, 10, it looks like that's your first, 10, 2. Somebody just put in the chat. It's not year. I'm not asking you for the year. I'm asking you for month and date. How y'all think you're doing? You not good?
Your directions were kind of unclear.
Okay, so blame it on me. Blame it on me. Blame it on the directions. All right.
We're gonna blame it on you.
Okay. All right. So let's start off. I'm gonna give y'all a hint. If I was January, and then you go, whoever's February or March or April, you just put up your month. So I would go like this, and then
I'm not sure what you want us to do afterwards. Do you want us to move our screens in that order?
No, I just want you. Once you get the order, you just call out your name, and then if the sequence matches, then you all win the prize.
Okay, what do we
Right.
win?
It's a secret.
Oh.
You gotta complete the activity. So I'm gonna hold up my 1. Now you go. I'm gonna ask y'all for your month. Okay, so 3, 3, 6, 9, another 6. Okay, so I got a couple marches. All right, so those that have a 6, then you need to determine who's first or second in the month of 6. If there's 2 3s, you need to figure out what your date is so that you know your alignment. So you're 3, you're March. Now you need to, okay, it's 3/8. So you put in the chat 3/8. So are you after, Christy, are you after 3/8? March 6th. Okay, so 3/6, 3/8. So now you know your order. So I'm January, Marcus, January 22nd. Next, go. Christy?
Don't we have a February?
I didn't see a February.
Okay, then I'm Christy, March 6th.
Ben?
Ben, 3/8.
April? Is there an April? Is there a May? Is there a June? June 24th? June 28th? Is there a July?
Gotta shout it out.
Is there an April? I mean, yeah, April, July, April, May, June, July, August.
Me.
Okay, there we go. All right. Y'all
Two.
see that? Okay.
You got 2 Augusts.
2 August? August what, Shawnee?
Shanae, August 20th.
August 20th. Was there another August?
Tomorrow.
Tamara? Is it?
Tamara, yeah.
Tamara?
Yeah.
Okay. August?
Yeah. August 8th.
8. So you're before Shawnee, okay?
Shanae.
Shanae, sorry.
Shanae.
Shanae. I'm sorry about that. Right, y'all see? Okay, so the gist of this is sometimes you're given information that you all have to triage. You won't have all the information, but you got to figure out how to make it work. Like Michelle presented y'all with all of this work of the COC, the RA, all of these things, complexities, but you all are going to have to work it out and figure it out together. You'll have different forms of communication styles. You'll have different learning styles. You'll have different ways you want to participate, but you all are going to have to figure that out, right? And so the essence of this activity was to get y'all to say, start thinking out of the box about coming to creative solutions, because we know old solutions get us old results, right? And so hopefully that activity pushed y'all to start thinking. And sometimes if you take people's words away, they don't know what to do. But there's other ways of communicating without words that are either intentional or unintentional. You can hurt somebody's feelings or isolate them from the group, right? Being mindful of things like that allows your group to come together better so that your collective brilliance is better than any one individual's brilliance. And so hopefully I'm going to blame it on my directions about my lack of clarity on what was asked in this activity, but hopefully y'all got the gist of what it's going to take for y'all to march forward and move forward. In all of your collective brilliance, you need to be understanding and welcoming and have grace for one another and share the space like y'all have demonstrated on the first 2 meetings. Continue that through as your facilitation changes, as the roles gets more intense, because you will be tackling some complex things. So I just hope that you all have fun with us. And it was a goofy activity, but something that always times resonates. And it operates much better in person because you have them line up by their date, but Zoom makes it a little bit more complicated. So I want to say thank you all for participating in that activity. And I know it was painful, but hopefully you have fun and you humor me. And you can now laugh at me for my bad instructions and directions. And Claudia was laughing at me. Claudia was laughing at me in the background about the activity.
Hey, Ben, we can have our own birthday party.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love how everyone got creative and like changed their name, you know, like it's really creative ways.
Yeah. Claudia's baking us a cheesecake for her birthday, she said. Right? And then isn't that what I read?
Yep.
You did great, Marcus. That was funny.
And June 28th wants to know your signs.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Virgo.
Yeah. All right, come on, let's go. Since everybody wants to know signs, I'm an Aquarius.
Cancer.
Cancer. Ben, I'm assuming you and Christy are the same.
We're Pisces.
Oh, Pisces?
Pisces.
Okay, Pisces, water baby, water children like me.
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Jesse?
Cancer, I said.
Cancer? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's okay.
Marcus, Aquarius is an air sign. It's not a water sign.
Yeah, it is.
It's air sign, but it belongs in water. You see my background? Wait, look at my background.
You make bubbles. Marcus makes bubbles.
You
Water
like
bubbles.
that?
Yeah. We have any fire signs aboard? We just got air and water.
Sag is fire.
Leo is
Sagittarius.
Leo is fire.
Oh, we got a Leo.
And
Brianna?
any Aries?
Virgo Earth.
Virgo Earth. Okay.
We got one earth sign. Good. Somebody's going to keep us down to earth.
There you go.
Poor Jeannie. Your work cut out. You got all these.
I'm also a Libran, so I'm an earth sign as well. So
Okay.
we'll hold it down.
All right, you gonna hold it down for us.
Down to earth. Yeah.
Thank y'all for enjoying us and having fun with us. We appreciate y'all.
That's fine. Thank you for being here. You're going to leave us now, huh? You and Cancer are leaving us?
Well, hopefully you want Cancer to leave you. You don't want that to stay around.
Hopefully Cancer
Bummer of a
never
birth-
arrives, but I'll
Yeah,
take Claudia anytime.
Bummer of a birth sign, huh? Yeah. Who named that anyway? Crabs isn't any better, right, Mr. Krabs?
Crabs.
Yeah, I know, for what it's worth. Yeah.
All right. I just curious, any other comments on that? And I just will say, like, how much I appreciate, like, it's amazing even on a screen that you can have fun like this, and it's connective to do this stuff and to be able to laugh and kind of have fun with it. I think there's a time when maybe I would have said you couldn't feel something on a screen, and yet, like, this experience, I feel like a tonal change. And I guess it's for me at least, my takeaway is to how do you create this in every meeting? And and that's part of the reason we asked Marcus and Claudia to be with us, because they're really good at this stuff. I will also just acknowledge that. And so just as we start to wrap up today, I want to say a huge thank you to Marcus and Claudia, who are colleagues that I work with here at King County and who just graciously offered to do this. They are amazing facilitators and group connectors. And I'm super grateful that I get to work with them all the time and that they were willing to help out with this. And then also to Michelle, who we hired as a consultant because of knowledge and expertise that she has, and was just the ability to pull some information together for all of you with not a lot of guidance or direction, because I don't bring content knowledge to this body of work. So I just want to express that appreciation. So I just want to, in follow-up to this conversation today, I'm going to get you all notes faster than I have been. I'm going to get notes out. I'm going to take a vacation next week and be off work. So I'm going to get notes to you tomorrow so that you have them, but also because I'm going to include in that, I want you to have the information about the next week's implementation board and governing committee meeting. So if you were interested in attending, you could do that. And I'll have links to the website where the Zoom connection will be posted. I had some initial thoughts about an agenda for next time and wrote down and just wanted to throw it out there. And we have a couple minutes if people want to give feedback on this. But Mark Jones, who's the first staff person and the first CEO of the Regional Homelessness Authority, officially starts in their role on April 26th. And so we'll be here for the meeting in May. And so I am assuming that Mark will come to the meeting, and it will be a chance for you to meet them and them to meet you and hopefully have a conversation. And then I heard an interest in understanding more about the implementation board and the governing committee. That's also something I'll just put in the notes for all of you when I send out an email, just who's on those groups and kind of what their core purpose is. And my guess is some of you will know some of the people on those two groups already. And this is just a chance to, start knowing that. And then I will ask Harold Odom and Nate Caminos, who are the co-chairs of the implementation board, if they are available to come to the meeting in May as well to meet you all. And then two other things I noted down for the meeting next time is some sort of overview or report from committees. And Christina, thanks so much for that idea. And I'm guessing others of you sit on other committees, and so I'll probably ask that question. But if not, I can also get somebody who sits on one of those committees maybe to come and just give you a 5-minute update on what they do. And then I think it would be great timing to have a conversation if any of you feel inclined to be a chair or co-chair of this meeting, because I really believe it'll be more effective if you have someone from within your group who's facilitating and sort of leading on setting the agenda. There'll definitely be support from staff like me initially, and eventually staff members of the Regional Homelessness Authority. And then Christina already mentioned that the System Performance Committee is going to be talking about the point in time count, and that I've also flagged that as good timing for you all to have a conversation about that. And I'm just curious, it sounds like a lot as I've spent like 3 minutes saying all of that, but if you have other needs for that meeting or something feels like it's not being covered.
Jeannie, did you say how long the meetings will be going forward?
2 hours, and right now we're calendaring them for every other month. Any feedback on that? Christy, do you have your hand
How
up?
about every month?
I think that's totally an option, and that is for sure we can discuss. Let me just. Should I put that on the agenda for next time for conversation, Marvin?
Yeah, I would agree. I guess I just would like more of a timeline. Again, as I said in the beginning, I'm more of like action steps, and so I am ready to get deep into this and kind of dive into it. I mean, at the end of the day, I get to go home to a bed, and there's people out here dying who don't. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Shanae, for that, like I think as a starting point, we can lay out a timeline for sort of key decisions of the group, like what time of the year they happen. Lise, I think you pointed out I'm going to blank, I want to call it the funding committee, but there's a time frame when that group meets, and so we can start putting that out as well. And yes, I'll prepare that for you. I may not have it for the notes. I'm sure I won't have it for the notes tomorrow, but I will work on it and get it out to you all.
That'd be appreciated. Absolutely.
Are you asking for a timeline like that to be a part of your perpetual agenda as a reminder for the deadlines that y'all's keeping?
That's part of accountability, right? Having a timeline, having those action steps, like by this day and time, we should have this done. And that holds not only us accountable, but helps us hold others accountable and really keeps the ball moving and the momentum going, right? And so I'm all for like tangible, smart goals. And with that comes definite deadlines and timelines that I think we should be achieving and completing, right?
Thank you for that clarity. Appreciate that.
We're almost done here.
Others, questions, comments, or things that we need to cover? Christy, I see your hand. I see two hands actually, an electronic one and a human one.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the raised hand format. It's just because I have a tendency to butt right in. Firstly, I second the monthly meeting. Marvin, I think that's a great idea because this is critical and we do need to treat it as such. And if we're going to make an impact, we need to get cracking on this, so to speak. And secondly, I'd be glad to offer the thanks to the Duwamish tribe next month as well, if you don't have somebody else that would like to step forward. It's a real honor and a privilege to me to be here, and so if nobody else steps forward, I'd be glad to do that. If everybody else is okay with it.
Thanks, Christy. Jerry, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say on the chair and vice chair, how are we going about doing that? Are we like voting or something, or how are we doing that?
It's commonly how boards make that decision, and I don't think you have to do it the way other boards do it all the time. And so that might be, typically, as Michelle pointed out in her section, this group has made decisions by consensus. And I'm not 100% sure how that would work, but I can imagine a way of having a conversation about chairs and vice chairs without voting. What do you all think about voting versus some other way of deciding? In a public meeting, you cannot do a secret ballot. That is the one thing I know for sure.
Are we expected to have a chair by today going forward for our meeting tomorrow, next month?
No, it's more that like today I wanted to put it out there to you all so you are aware and can think about it. And then we can have a discussion about what does the role look like at the next meeting. And maybe some people will be ready to put their names forward and maybe not. It's okay if it takes a couple of meetings. It did with both the governing committee and the implementation board. So don't feel like rushed.
Yeah, I think it's just education and knowledge as to what that's going to be like, what type of support those people are going to have, what's the expectations and guidelines that they're going to be held accountable for in those positions. Like those types of questions I would need answered before I could, whether it's a census to vote or putting my name in, I would have to have all that type.
So I will also work on some written materials in advance of the next meeting that covers that.
Thank you. I don't mean to keep giving you a whole bunch of stuff. My bad.
I know, Shanae. I don't know about this. Whoops, I keep getting assignments, but that is my job. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My computer's saying mute on, mute off, and I don't know if you can hear me. That is my job. I mean, that is a staff person's job, and when the staff of the authority are in place, they will be here to take on these assignments for you all. So just to be clear, this is actually totally appropriate that your staff are here to support you and to get you the information and materials you need to make the decisions that are your job to make. All right, well, we are at 1:58. You will get a calendar request from me tomorrow for a meeting in May. And then my goal to calendar the other meetings is they're going to come not from my calendar at King County, but a Regional Homelessness Authority calendar. And so you should also get those for the rest of the year. And I'm just going to initially go ahead and schedule them every month. And the cadence that when we do those polls for meetings, we never find a time where everyone says this is the best time for me. And so we pick one that works for the majority of the people, and it's looking like the first Wednesday of the month from 2 to 4. So you can expect that. Oh, go ahead, Lise.
When should we expect to have our county, or I guess our .gov emails?
We are working on that, and there's a little bit of complexity, so I'm sorry. I'm sure it feels really slow. There's some complexity because like right now we're doing everything from King County system, but you all will really not be a King County entity and the authority is not. And so we're trying to figure out how we can quickly establish that stuff for the authority and just get it up and running. And so I'm hoping to have that by the end of this month. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here and for your great questions and participation. And
thanks for your help, Jeannie. Thank you so much.
You'll be getting emails.
That email that you sent out for that link for this meeting, that's the one we can give out to people, correct?
Yeah. Go ahead, Carrie.
I was going to say, so to be clear, and moving forward, this should be coming from, I believe, info@kcrha.org. So look for it from there instead of from me. So what happens is I send an email through Zoom. It automatically sends from Zoom. So it's info@zoom.us. And that's your personalized link. And that's how you should be getting into these meetings. Separately, and before the meeting, I'll also send you the attendee information so you can share that with friends and colleagues so that they have that link. In addition, it will always be...
How soon do we have that link, like, to give out to people?
We send So that's a question for you all to let me know when you want it. But we have to, based on OPMA requirements, post it 24 hours in advance. So it will always be posted 24 hours in advance on the website.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I'll have to get back to you and let you know how advanced I want that. Because I want people to show up and, like Christy said, like she invited people, but they had other things in process. So if we could, like, if I can get this on their calendar, then that would be a better idea, right?
Right. So the website will always have the date and the time, usually a couple weeks in advance. And as we move forward with a standard time, it will always be posted. However, the actual link and the attendee Zoom information we hold, because it's Zoom bombing, just to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we hold that until 24 hours. So folks can always go to the website and always contact me or Jeannie if you have questions.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Well, y'all have a great day, and thanks for showing up and showing out. I appreciate everybody's buy-in and motivation and passion for being here. And I believe your name is Liza, is that correct?
Lise?
Lise, thank you. For just pointing out, that there's that other perspective of speaking up and stepping back. I appreciate that, and do need reminders in that. Thank you for that as well. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you. I appreciate all of your
Thanks, everybody.
contributions. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.